Hello, everybody, and welcome to Whispers Radio here on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. I'm Jordan Cline here with Rachel Todd and the lovely, beautiful Ms. Lola Miller.
Oh. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to talk much today.
I decided because I felt a bit outnumbered last week.
So you're bringing in reinforcements.
So I figure, why keep this awesome harem to myself?
Funny.
I brought in my buddy Jeff. Jeff, how you doing?
Fine. How are you doing?
He's going to be hanging out with us. I don't know if we can get him to talk or not.
I'll do my best.
Well, you got to get that mic up closer to you.
Yeah, you got to pretend like you're eating it. All right, I won't. I'm sorry.
No,
Oh, were you going dirty?
No.
Oh, geez, Lola.
Do I ever?
You gotta. I'm not even going there. This isn't Howard Stern.
Don't.
Give us a call, 304-214-1600. If you're out of the area, 1-866-514-1600. It's 69 degrees and cloudy here in downtown Wheeling. How you doing, Miss Rachel?
I'm okay.
If anybody's interested, we did take our engagement pictures this weekend. And they're out on Facebook. So for those of you that Facebook stalk me, check them out. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. You need to Facebook stalk me. Our guest tonight's going to be Mr. Nick Redfern. Hold on, let me pull this up. I don't have Nick Queen to read all this stuff for me, so I'm going to do it myself. Nick Redfern has been interested in UFOs since 1978. He has been going through British classified documents. He's been involved in a mini series of UFO aspects. I guess we're going to be talking about NASA Conspiracies. Nick, you with us?
Yeah, how's it going?
How's it going, Nick?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Tell us about your new book, The NASA Conspiracies.
Well, it's basically a study of all the sort of conspiracy theories and stories that have been sort of leveled at NASA as it relates to things like astronaut sightings of UFOs, the controversy surrounding the so-called face on Mars, and things like that. I think people, when you're dealing with UFOs, inevitably people think of, well, what does NASA know about it? And, I tried to approach the subject with an open mind rather than believing all the conspiracy theories have any validity to them, and just sort of look at them all on their own merits, or in some cases lack of merits. And just try and determine where the truth falls or doesn't fall, so to speak.
Well, good luck with that one. Have you gotten into, there's a website called the FBI Vault, and I got on there trying to find any of these claims, like from the Project Blue Book and things like that. I really wasn't very successful, and when I did find documents, they were so blacked out that in some cases there was more black than there was actual words.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the thing with that Vault site, although it's an FBI site, it literally only has FBI documents on there. So in other words, if you're looking for the Air Force's UFO files or the CIA's UFO files, you have to go to their own websites for them. But the files are interesting. They've all been declassified through the terms of the Freedom of Information Act, and basically concern, sort of from a historical perspective, the way in which the FBI has looked at various UFO-related controversies over the years. And like, as you would expect, they cover everything from interesting, credible reports to hoaxes to somebody, out drunk late one night or whatever. It's literally, it's literally across the entire board. Exactly to the sort of same things that I get hold of, when I investigate cases. Some of them are credible, others fall apart. But what I always tell people is, when you do get rid of the incredible cases and the less believable ones, we're always still left with a small body that do seem to stand up to scrutiny.
Now, you said earlier the face on Mars. I'm not sure I'm exactly familiar with that one. I know I know the face on the moon.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows that one. But what's the face on Mars?
Well, the face on Mars, it's a weird story. If you Google it, you'll find a lot on it. Basically, what happened was that in the summer of 1976, NASA sent a space probe to Mars to essentially sort of map and photograph the planet. And one series of photographs were taken in an area of Mars called Cydonia, which which is situated about 10 degrees north of the Martian equator. And one of the photographs that was sent back from the NASA probe showed what looked like a huge carved human-like face staring up from the surface of the planet. Now, NASA itself doesn't avoid talking about this so-called face on Mars, but their viewpoint is it's kind of like people seeing faces in clouds. They say that, well, if the clouds and the shadows are in the right direction and the right angle and they hit the rocks properly, it looks like a face. Now, and of course, we have all seen faces in clouds, and, it's like people say they see a picture of Jesus in a Dorito or whatever, which they do. People do say that. So in other words, there is potentially a rational explanation for it. But the more I've looked into the controversy of Mars had some sort of intelligent life, millions of years ago, who knows? It's kind of one of these issues that because we're not able to get to Mars, all we have is photographs. It's kind of like the same thing as somebody said they take a photograph of the Loch Ness Monster. It's like if all you've got to analyze is the photograph, then you're going to be endlessly arguing. One person says it's real, somebody else says it's fake, somebody else said it's misidentification, and that's sort of where we're at with the face on Mars. NASA kind of views it wearily almost. They're tired of sort of answering questions about are they hiding the truth that life once existed on Mars and, there was a civilization there. And then people on the other side of the coin say, well, yeah, this is hard evidence, but as I said, until we can actually go there and examine it, it's going to constantly be kind of like an us versus them scenario, I guess.
Now, and how do you feel about that? The life out on Mars. Do you think that? People. I don't think for 1 minute there's cities and little green men running around on Mars. I don't think that at all. But what I do think is if you look at a number of the photographs, very interesting photographs that NASA has declassified. For example, Mars has a north and a south pole, and we know from the photographs that there's a substantial amount of frozen water, obviously in the form of ice, at the two poles. So, in other words, where there's water, that's often a very good indication that life can develop. And if we look at some of the aerial photographs of Mars, you see evidence of what look like massive ancient shorelines of lakes and oceans, which obviously there's no water on the planet now, running water, in the form of oceans. But these markings seem to suggest there could well have been millions of years ago. So, the idea that there could be still some sort of microbial, rudimentary life on Mars, I don't rule that out. But, I don't think, Mars has its equivalent of sort of, Vegas and everything else. Now, here's something.
Not that incredible.
Rachel and I were talking the other night on, whether or not there was, if there was bacteria or, if there was, something that's, small of life on another planet, would that be considered alien?
Well, that's actually a very good question, because people, if you talk about aliens, people want it to be, nuts and bolts spaceships and aliens coming down saying, take me to your leader, etc., that sort of thing. That's the definitive image that everybody has. They either think it's going to be friendly aliens like E.T. or something like out of Predator, where they're going to wipe us out or whatever. It would be kind of ironic if our first exposure to real alien life was something you could only see under a microscope, But on the other hand, if it was proven to be really, literally extraterrestrial life, then even microbial-sized, it would be a profound discovery. Now, one of the big concerns that NASA actually has, this isn't sort of a conspiracy theory, this is actually a legitimate concern, is that, say, for example, NASA astronauts one day, go to Mars. They launch a manned mission to Mars, which probably will happen when, the available technology is around. Mm-hmm. And they find some of these microbes and they bring them back to the Earth for study. Well, the argument is, what if they're not just microbes? What if they're actually highly advanced viruses? What would happen if one of these viruses actually sort of breached the security and broke out on our planet? And, the human immune system would have no way to fight off an alien virus. You know, it's like there are certain viruses on Earth, like HIV, that the human body
can't
has
handle.
no defense against unless you take the right sort of cocktail of drugs and medicines. We would probably have no way of dealing with an alien virus. And NASA actually treat this issue very, very seriously. You know, the worst case scenario of bringing, perhaps even accidentally, you know, a microbe that contains a viral gets stuck to the landing pads of one of the craft and gets embedded in it, and when it comes back to Earth, it survives the journey, and then sort of spreads and wildly mutates across the planet. You know, before you know it, you're in some sort of 28 days later type scenario, or Dawn of the Dead or whatever, you know.
Yeah, you just don't know what you're getting into.
No, I mean, joking aside, it is a very serious theory, even though it's a theoretical one, that NASA has sort of given serious attention to. And I think one of the more important issues is that, you know, as I said, microbial alien life is still definitively alien life. And it would open the doors, I think, to greater discussion to the effect of, well, if we find microbial life on Mars, who knows what exists in the nearest star system. So,
well, see, that to me is really more scary than the thought that there are little gray men or green men coming down because of the unknown.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think as human beings, we kind of sort of rigidly pigeonhole stuff into certain scenarios. One being, you know, we always expect if aliens exist, they're going to kind of look like us or think like us, or they're going to come down and help us or attack us. We don't very often give much thought to these alternative scenarios that sort of take things away from the realm of science fiction and more into sort of weird, ominous science fact in many respects. So.
Well, you know, that's not out of the realm of possibility either. Well, and that's why, as ridiculous as it sounds now, when the teams went up to the moon, you know, they were quarantined and everything when they came back because of that. Who knew what was, you know, what they could be possibly bringing back on them?
Yeah, and a side note to what Lola said before, you were talking about, you know, astronauts who, you know, seen UFOs. Like, can you tell us some cases, you know?
Yeah, well, one of the best examples is Gordon Cooper, who was one of the original Mercury astronauts, which was NASA's first manned space program. And Gordon Cooper had a deep interest in UFOs all throughout his life. Ironically, his first exposure to the whole UFO phenomenon occurred before he became an astronaut. You know, people often think if you want to become an astronaut, you just apply to NASA and say, I want to be an astronaut, you know. But it doesn't quite
That's why I never get a phone call.
It doesn't quite work like that, unfortunately. You have to have, like, a deep background in science, technology, and also aviation. And so Gordon Cooper, who, as I said, one of the original Mercury astronauts, his background was as a pilot in the U.S. Air Force. And in the early 50s, he was stationed with the Air Force in West Germany. And because this was sort of the height of the Cold War, you know, you had European forces and American forces sort of scanning the skies, looking out for a sneak Russian attack, you know, launching a sneak atomic attack on the West, which fortunately never happened. But Cooper said that on one occasion, which actually lasted for like 3 days, he and a number of other pilots that were sort of patrolling the West German, East German border said they saw these huge flying saucer type craft in the skies, flying at very high level, and, you know, trained in aircraft recognition, they knew the difference between an American fighter, a British fighter, and a Russian fighter. That's how closely they had to understand the differences, you know, between the aircraft.
Yeah, you got to know who's shooting at you.
Yeah, exactly. So they clearly knew the difference between seeing an aircraft and something that they described as like a large circular gleaming silver flying saucer. And they saw these craft over the course of several days, and the official explanation was that it was just misidentification. You know, you didn't see what you thought you saw. But this kind of stayed with Cooper all through his life, and then when he retired from NASA, he actually spoke more openly about his beliefs on UFOs and gave a number of presentations before the United Nations even, talking about how he believed that some UFOs were evidence of visitations from somewhere else, and that they were obviously more advanced than us. And, you know, it's like if somebody listens to me saying that on the way home from work, they say, well, that's interesting, but what have we got for dinner tonight? It's kind of in one ear and out the other sometimes. But when you actually hear that coming from a NASA astronaut, that's a very different matter, and it's difficult to sort of dismiss the story of a NASA astronaut who said he saw UFOs when he's also piloting a spacecraft. This isn't somebody prone to hallucinations or misidentification. So stories like this, that sort of encourages me to continue, what I do and not to write it off all as a waste of time or whatever. So.
Well, what about contactees? Now, I know you wrote a book about that. We've had a lot of guests on. Some of them I'm not quite so sure of. And others I really do, to me are very credible. What do you base the credibility factor on?
Well, I think it's probably several things. Number one, I think when you, as I've done, you interview a lot of people about UFO sightings and, incredible events and things like that. By default, by the number of people you interview, you become kind of like a good judge of character. Well, you have to be, Yeah. And I think it is a case where people often, you begin to understand and appreciate the sort of complexity of the human mind. Is somebody trying to pull a joke on you? Are they trying to, fabricate a story and a hoax to kind of pull you in and then expose you as just being gullible? Are some of them just fantasy prone, or are they telling the truth? And I've experienced people who fall into all those categories. I think most people actually are quite honest and earnest and genuine about wanting, to discuss their sightings because they want an answer as to what happened. Now, of course, the more sensational the story, the more of a requirement there is, if you like, to get additional information, background testimony, supportive data from other people and additional sources, that kind of thing. It's like somebody says they see a weird craft in the sky and they're a pilot and it zooms away at high speed. That's very interesting. And, because of their background, their witness testimony in itself is good testimony. But when you have, just no disrespect, an average member of the public who said, I was abducted by aliens, etc., and taken on board a UFO, then by default, the more controversial the story, the more we try and need to vindicate it. So, I think while the witness testimony is certainly the most important aspect of the phenomenon, without the witnesses, we have nothing to talk about or investigate. But we do need to tread carefully how we accept and interpret sort of really sensational stories. We have to be very careful.
Well, have you run across anybody that has had, say, an implant? And, how do you even, if they say they do, then will the medical community readily help you discover whether this is something that is man-made here on Earth, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. No, I think the important things, that I always stress when it comes to things like this is that, when you do speak to people who said, they've been abducted and they've had implants, the natural tendency is to think, well, the scientific community or the medical community are the ones to go to. The problem is that most people in these communities, although they would be the ideal person or people, they rarely ever want to get involved because basically, it's the fear of being linked with UFOs. That's the gynecologist who, investigates little green men, or that's the nuclear scientist who believes in aliens, or, this is the guy who has done research on black holes and thinks aliens are hidden at Area 51, which they might be. But the problem is that, I think what often happens is that scientists and university professors and academics, they're often very worried about, number one, their reputations, and number two, ensuring they get the grants for next year's university course or whatever,
Yeah.
No, we've had people before, on the show saying that they had implants and they were getting them out, and then it was some kind of rock that's not, known to man. But, you never hear anything past that. Like, yeah, they're reporting that to us, but then it's like, okay, why isn't it in the paper? Why isn't it in...
Yeah.
anywhere. And here's a question from the Christine in the chat room. It says, how do you know you have an implant?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, part of it is, don't get me wrong, I actually do believe there's a genuine UFO phenomenon, and I think a number of abduction stories are valid. The problem is, I think, that because people know of the sort of alien implant angle, that, if you say you've been abducted and you're investigated by, you go to an abduction expert, they may well say, well, because, abductions occur and people report implants, we should check you for implants.
Uh-huh.
Now, I'm pretty sure that if you check most people's bodies, you might find a little anomaly under the skin somewhere. It's almost kind of like you're confirming the reality of the phenomenon because you go in looking for something. It might be the case when I was 5 years old, I fell over, playing soldiers with friends or whatever, and got a piece of rock in your bottom of your foot, and it's still there, and it got calcified and covered over by skin and bone. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you're x-rayed, and wow, what's that in the bottom of your foot? But in other words, it's like people wouldn't know the implant was there unless you were claimed to be an abductee. In other words, I think it's interesting that abductees report these things, and sometimes we actually find them. But I think sort of like a control test should be done to see how many people who aren't claiming abduction also have something, which may just be the result of, as I said, breaking a needle off in your finger when you were 6 months old, crawling around on the floor, and that happens occasionally. And the human body sometimes, when foreign bodies enter it, if you can't get rid of them, what it does, it surrounds them with light, and they become what's called calcified. And so, in other words, it doesn't cause infection.
Yeah.
Because it's calcified, if you like. And so in that respect, it could be the case that, a lot of people have sort of things in the bodies that seem strange, but might not be. But that doesn't take away, the fact that a lot of people, very credible people, have reported the abduction experience. I mean, I've spoken to, police officers who have sat before me and said, I have this experience and these memories have been taken on board a craft and sort of
really
treated like a lab rat.
Wow.
When you hear that from
an officer,
yeah, an officer, I mean, they have a lot to lose by saying something like that. I mean, one of the important issues that I bring up is, if people tell me these stories and they have a professional background, particularly in law enforcement, it's kind of like if they were to arrest someone and the defense, the person's legal team found out that this person said they'd been abducted by aliens, they could conceivably use that as a reasonable argument that the arrest wasn't valid.
Yeah.
So in other words...
So they're going out on a limb, kind of.
Oh, yeah, that's the important thing. I mean, to have a police officer say something like that, in my view, they have to be extremely certain in their mind that the experience occurred and that they have the presence of mind to say so. But, it can be hazardous when, you have that sort of background and position of authority, I guess.
All right, Nick, if you want to hang on just a second, we got to cut to a commercial break. You're listening to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. We will be right back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Whispers Radio here on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. It is 6:37 p.m., 69 degrees here in downtown Wheeling. Give us a call, 304-214-1600. If you're out of the area, call toll-free, 1-866-514-1600. I'm Jordan Cline, here with Rachel Todd, Lola Miller, and Jeff Schultz. Jeff, you actually have a question for our guest?
Yeah, I have a question. You're saying all these people are afraid to come forward with who are incredible people with careers and everything with the implants. I was wondering if also they're afraid to come forward with the repercussions the aliens might have against them.
That's a good question. I think a lot of people who have UFO experiences, they do feel kind of sort of like a link between, themselves and the abductors, if you like. It's kind of difficult for those of us who are sort of on the outside looking in as to how these experiences affect people. But, some people have said, they feel afterwards that these entities or whatever they are sort of profoundly psychologically connected with them, and they actually almost feel it's almost like a situation where they feel that they're indebted to the aliens, if you like, for sort of opening their minds, which even for me it's difficult to sort of get your head around when you've not personally had any sort of experience of the phenomenon, rather than just investigating it. But a lot of people do feel sort of changed, and they feel sort of connected to these beings, and want to sort of stay on their good side, if you like.
Well, if there's something like that happened to me, I'd be terrified to cross. I mean, knowing that they could come and get you and erase memory and, only allow you to remember what they want you to remember.
Yeah.
That's a power that is, so
scary.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, from my perspective, when people talk about abductions and things like that, a lot of people view it as quite a positive thing. It's like, wow, I was the chosen one, so to speak. I actually personally don't view it like that at all. I think there's something sort of very ominous about entities that, if they're real, and I think there is a genuine UFO phenomenon, I'm absolutely convinced of that. If these things are real and they're coming here to sort of skulk around in the middle of the night and treat us like lab rats, wipe our memories clean, that's not a sign of people who are coming here to be friendly. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they're coming here to destroy us, but what it suggests is that they're just totally self-serving, which ironically is what we are. We use the entire planet and all its resources purely and simply to help no other life form other than the human race, for the most part. There are hundreds of thousands of different life forms on the planet, but 99.9% of everything we do is to help us. And so, in other words, I think these creatures are pretty much the same. That they might sort of say it's for our benefit or they're our friends, but at the end of the day, as I said, roaming around the middle of the night and, abducting people and implants and medical experimentation, none of that strikes me as being positive or friendly from our perspective.
Oh, yeah. It's
more
very
along
intrusive.
the lines, to me it's more, exactly, it's intrusive, and it's more along the lines of what we do, in sort of like a scientific lab setting, if you like, and I think that's probably how we're perceived. We're just
gerbils.
A sort of relatively primitive race that's sort of ripe for exploitation.
I think we got a call.
Yes, we do. This is Christine calling from Mississippi.
Christine, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Do I need to take off my headphones talking to you?
Yeah, that might help, but you're going to get a feedback.
Okay, I'm going to take it off.
Okay.
Okay, my question is, I have two close friends, and both of them have had blackouts, as in one was driving a car, and she seems to lost about 3 hours of time and pulled over, and the next thing she knew, she had the police and her brother and everything there. But she noticed on her cell phone that she had called me during the time of the blackout, and it was about 12 midnight, so I didn't answer the phone.
Oh.
And okay, so I get another friend, and she's in a totally different state. Now, the first one was in Mississippi. The second one she was in Montana. And she was cooking soup by herself, and she had a blackout, about a 2-hour blackout. And when she woke up, she was out on the floor, and she got up, and there was 2 bowls sitting on the table with spoons, and she had called me too, and I don't know why I didn't answer the phone.
Now, were the bowls like she had eaten, or there were 2 people had
Two people had eaten in the
Okay.
bowls, and the spoons were out, and she was by herself.
Nick, what do you think about that?
Well, that's interesting, because that is, I don't want to sort of, put words into, Christine's friend's mind or mouth, so to speak. But that is something that we often hear in abduction-type stories, where people, they're watching TV or something, and the next minute, a couple of hours has gone by, and there's something different in the room, as if, it's kind of like something happened, but your memory has entirely been just wiped of that 2 or 3 hours or whatever. There's a lot of stories like that where people don't even get back by hypnosis what happened in that period. It's just like a blackout type of situation, but where not just where you've fallen asleep, but where things have clearly been altered or changed in the room.
Yeah, it's been altered and changed. Yeah.
I think what I would say is in abduction stories, most cases also involve something else. Like seeing a strange light before the experience occurred, or and neither. I mean, I asked total questions, and neither one of them had anything like that. It was just the strange thing was they were literally trying to contact me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is strange.
And I don't know what to. Well, the answer I gave both of them is that I've already had communications with certain things, and I actually said that the law of the universe is you've got your space and they have their space, and you never go into anybody else's space without being accepted. And I don't allow anybody in my space unless I accept them. Well, I have had others to try to get in my space, and I flat out said no, and literally meant it.
Wow.
And so they stayed out. And I said, you have to keep that fear out, and you have to always know that the universe is protecting you. I mean, you're as powerful as anyone else, and that was my only answer I could give them. But I didn't. I really dearly wish I would have picked up the phone.
Oh, everybody who's listening right now dearly wishes you picked up that phone.
Can you imagine what I would have heard? But
or what they would have said.
It just, I would love to hear it. And plus, I would love to have it on recording, but that didn't happen, so, but I definitely would pick up the phone from now on if I get one.
Definitely. Keep it right in your hand. Christine, thank you very much for your call. Okay. You are, I think, the first call-in we've had on the air since we started back.
And if you I don't understand. I mean, I don't think I've been abducted. I don't. But they were very concerned, and they just kind of just ignored it and lived their life. I mean, what can you do?
Wow.
And we bring it up occasionally over the phone.
Well, answer that phone next time.
I sure will.
All right, Christine, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Now, Nick, I do got a question because we're kind of running slow on time. I've got to ask, and we were talking a little bit before about Men in Black.
Yes.
And there's like two different sides of the spectrum here when you look at Men in Black. You have it's a government agency, and then you have it's an alien agency.
Yeah.
What are you
dress badly?
Yeah, that dress like out of time period and talk different. Like, there's these two separate agencies with the same name. What's your take on that?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because actually in June I've got a new book out called The Real Men in Black.
There we go.
What a segue.
Yeah.
See, it would have been great if I knew about that book.
Yeah, that's kind of spooky almost. But yeah, I mean, the new book sort of delves into these exact issues. Who are the Men in Black? If you look at the, people who've watched the Hollywood film with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, Men in Black. People assume it's just Hollywood stories, but a lot of people don't realize that the film was actually based upon real-life accounts of meetings with Men in Black type characters who had warned people not to talk about UFO encounters. Now, where it gets weird is, as you point out, some of these people do sound like government agents. They dress in black suits, ties, etc. But there are others that seem much weirder. The people, the eyewitnesses describe them as sort of being very thin, pale, sickly looking. They don't seem very conversant with our customs and even our language. It's almost like, they're like a fish out of water, so to speak, and they look odd. People have said they wear these big wraparound sunglasses, but if you peer carefully, you can kind of see like bulging eyes and they just look strange. So
kind of like thyroid eyes, is that what they call it?
Thyroid eyes, exactly, yeah. And one of the things I point out in the book is that maybe the Men in Black mystery, or I'm saying maybe, probably, isn't explainable via one answer. It could actually be, there's their Men in Black, our Men in Black. I even address in the book the ideas of one particular researcher I interviewed who speculated on, could they be time travelers, from the future, and they wear black suits because it's a form of dress which, if they came back in today or the 1950s or the 30s, they wouldn't look too out of place wearing. It's like, which is kind of an outrageous thing to think the Men in Black are time travelers. But when you hear the scenario, if you like, or the theories, the idea that, well, if they're going to come back, they've got a dress applicable to the era. If you're constantly bouncing back through different times, what sort of mode of dress would be, suitable from the 1910s, say, to the present day? You're not going to get by in 1910 in kind of like combat trousers and a Rob Zombie T-shirt, But you would get by in a suit then, and you would get by in a suit today. So maybe that's why they wear black suits, so they're being inconspicuous in any time zones.
Well, I think that's
maybe
where
there's several types of Men in Black.
I think that's where Fringe got the idea.
They did.
That parallel universe that we're running with, and the travelers between the two are just like that. Black suits and wraparound sunglasses and shaved heads, because then too you don't have to worry about hair length, which is very definitive in some time periods.
That's right. You're quite right. And actually, in one of the very early episodes of Fringe, they had one of the guys who looks with the shaven head, who looks like the Men in Black, trying to eat Jell-O out of a bowl with his fingers. And that's actually based on a real story that somebody said they were visited by the Men in Black, and they offered him a bowl of Jell-O, and he didn't know how to eat it. So that was actually taken direct from a real life Men in Black report.
Well, I know I was telling them earlier before the show when I was down in Point Pleasant. I was talking. There's a cafe down there where when the Mothman sightings and stuff were happening, the Men in Black were interviewing people. And they said that they brought one of them some food, and he had no clue how to use utensils or anything like that. I mean, they had to cut up his food for him. Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's a lot like that. And, if we had just one or two stories like that, I'd be inclined to write them off. But when you get, there are literally sort of hundreds of stories like that where most people have never spoken about it. But very often, when I interview UFO witnesses, I try never to lead them, into different areas. But I often sort of just make just a comment, after the UFO experience, did anything weird happen? And sometimes I'll get stories along the lines of somebody will say, oh, well, I didn't have any more UFO sightings or anything like that, but something weird did happen the next day. This guy came around wearing a suit or whatever and started asking me all sorts of questions on the doorstep, and he claimed he was doing like a survey, but the questions were all sort of weird questions. And he had this strange black car in the street.
It's Jehovah's Witnesses coming up and asking.
Yeah, exactly. Or somebody.
Do you know Jesus? What happened last night didn't happen.
Yeah, that's exactly as it is. Or other people will say, and this is one classic example that I really did get. Somebody said, I had this experience, and then the next day this census taker guy came round at a time when there shouldn't have been a census, and began asking questions about how many people lived in the house and things like this, which are the sort of normal questions that a census taker would ask, but then said, have you had any strange dreams lately or anything like that? And, and it got in sort of really weird areas, and they didn't necessarily associate it with Men in Black stories, but that is exactly how it came across, that you often find in UFO experiences people have weird stuff like this, or they get hang-up phone calls immediately after a UFO encounter. And, I admit it's sort of a real, no pun intended, sort of fringe element of the subject, and difficult to kind of explain. But that's what people say,
That's weird. Now, are you going to... Well, you've already got the book done. I was going to say, if you were going to come down to Point Pleasant, is it Point? Yeah.
Point Pleasant.
Yeah. And interview those people, you'd swing up here.
Cool. I should do that one of the days.
Oh, yeah. We can have you in the studio.
I think right now the book's actually at the printer's office. I know it's gone.
You've already written it.
Yeah, the editing stage for the Word document was completed about more than a month ago, so I think it's probably at sort of the PDF initial printing or layout stage right now. So.
Wow.
Well, but you may want to write a sequel or something.
Oh, yeah.
And then come and see us, Nick.
Absolutely.
Oh, that would be cool. I'd love to do that. That would be cool.
Yeah, Point Pleasant's not too far, and I mean it's a small town, but everyone there has had an experience.
Jordan loves it down there.
You know, one time going down there was enough for me. I mean, you go down and you meet people in the streets, and they have a story about, you know, being abducted or seeing Men in Black or, you know, the Mothman. I mean, it's that a whole town has had that experience. It's crazy.
I've never actually been there. I would like to get out and sort of just say I've been there. Do you know what I mean? And go to the TNT plants and everything else.
Oh yeah, let me tell you. Now, when do you think your new book's coming out?
Oh, it's out in June. It's sort of roughly about the 10th to the 15th of June, and it's called The Real Men in Black.
Okay, we're going to have you back on so you can talk to us about this.
All right, well, I'll make sure that they send you a copy. They actually, jokingly at first, but then it became serious, asked for me to take a picture of me wearing like black sunglasses and fedora hat for the back cover. So I had to go out and get a fedora hat, or borrow one, I should say, of somebody I actually knew who owns one. Even.
I have a couple.
A pair of sunglasses.
We'll send you Jordan.
Because I'm kind of skinny and pale. In the photograph, for the back cover, I actually do kind of look like a real man in black.
Now, Nick, how do you get skinny and pale and live in Texas?
Well, actually, one of the reasons is I think...
I hate steak and sunlight.
Yeah, well, originally from being from England, I think, you know, your body's chemistry is sort of inclined, you know, even if I go out in the sun, you know, we get a lot of hot weather here, but after, you know, when the winter comes or the autumn comes, you just go back to your original colour. Yeah. And I guess I'm just one of those lucky people that, you know, I eat what I like and I don't really put weight on, so...
oh, you jerk.
Must be nice.
Yeah, I know. It's disgusting, I know.
Real quick, I want to ask you, because I forgot earlier, somebody had asked about glass tunnels. And we've only got a couple minutes left. Do you know anything about glass tunnels?
Glass tunnels?
It was when we were talking about Mars.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there is a story about some of the photographs that NASA themselves have sent back and released. Yeah. That seem to show what look like huge, like tubular-like structures on the surface of Mars that some people speculate look like tunnels, almost like a, you know, sort of a New York subway train system, that sort of thing. Yeah, and they do look really odd. They look like, if you kind of imagine like a huge, several mile long, sort of transparent straw, you know, and you photographed it on the ground. That's what they look like. They look like huge, clear straws, and people have speculated, you know, could there be some sort of transportation system or something like that even?
Wow, that'd be a good...
That's what the callers talking about. I think they probably are. But, I mean, they are weird because they actually do look artificial. So.
Wow.
Now, they're not in that sea of something where the face is, right? These would be
they're
other
on
pictures.
Different areas, yeah. That's the interesting thing about Mars. There's stuff all over the place on the planet. It's not all just sort of, you know, focused on one area. So.
Well, when I pulled the pictures up initially, just, you know, face on Mars, there was one out of a set of 4, and it looked like an entire body, kind of partially covered with sand. And now that's not really up there, is it?
No, I think that one's just like a joke that somebody put together. But the ones that where it's just
I fell for it, but
the ones that are just the face, that is, you know, those are the original ones where it just looks like a head. Okay. You know, but as I said, I think we're still going to be arguing about this until somebody actually goes there. And who knows, even if we'll be told the truth, you know. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, somebody could even come back and say something and then it not, you know, be taken seriously. I mean, look at, you know, we were talking about astronauts. Edgar Mitchell, you know, who was, you know, recently out everywhere saying there are, you know, UFOs. They briefed us, you know, when we went out to space. They briefed us on the UFOs. They briefed us on aliens. They told us what to do, what to say, and he's like, you know what, now I'm just so old that I'm going to say whatever I want and they can't do anything to me.
No, that's right. But, you know, I think the more people like that who come forward, it's those sorts of people like Edgar Mitchell that people, the media, the public, and everybody else does sit up and listen to.
Well, that face, now, I just am fascinated by this thing. It is really huge, right? I mean, if we even sent people down there, or up there, it's not going to look from the surface like we're seeing it look
It'll
from
just look like a mountain.
Yeah.
Oh, no. If you walked on it, you wouldn't be able to tell it was a face. I mean, it's huge. I mean, massive. The only way you could really learn anything probably from it, if you're walking on it, is, if you went to the area where the so-called eye sockets are, if you looked at those eye sockets or the nostrils or the mouth, and you could tell if they looked like they'd been carved.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, rather than just rocks
Erosion.
eroded or whatever. Yeah, and
wow.
I think that's why sort of a first-hand investigation, I think, is needed, because it's really...
Well, pack up your bags, Nick. Let's go.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much for being on the show. We're out of time, and I know you got to get to the airport.
Yeah, I got a TV thing, so...
one of those things.
Let's see, we warmed you up now.
We got you ready.
You primed me for the...
Now, listen, we name-dropped for you, so...
I should do that.
All right, Nick, thank you very much. We're going to have you back on when that new book comes out.
All right, I'll make sure you get a copy of it anyway, guys.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much. Have a
Nick.
good
All
day.
right.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
See you, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Nick Redfern, everybody.
Thank you so much.
I'll get his information up on the website as soon as I figure out how to do all that.
Uh-huh.
If you're wondering why nothing's up yet from the last 2 weeks, well, my computer shut down and I lost everything that I had. I got the backup this week.
Called Back It Up.
Yeah, I know.
Save your files.
Get him. He was supposed to meet up with Nick.
All right, ladies.
Okay. Well, we do have to go because we have another show to record, which, of course, will be played next Monday
That's
at
right.
6.
All right, everybody. We love you. Until next week.
Who's our guest next week?
Don Wagner from Peace of Mind Paranormal in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Very good.
All right, until next week. Don't be afraid, only believe.